My name is Olivia Morgan. I'm 52 years old, and for 30 of those years I believed I was building a family. I discovered, on a March evening, that I was merely decorating the prison where my husband had kept me. I'm telling you what happened because I need someone to know. Not for revenge, that already came, in the most unexpected way possible. I'm telling this because for 3 decades I was slowly erased, and now I need to exist again, even if only in the words of a stranger reading this somewhere. Everything began on March 15th, 2024, our 30th wedding anniversary. Richard had reserved the main ballroom of our mansion for 50 guests. I learned about the dinner 3 days before, when the decorator called me to confirm the tablecloth colors. My husband didn't think it necessary to tell me. 30 years together, and I found out about my own party by accident. I spent those 3 days organizing everything. I called the caterer, confirmed the menu, checked the guest list. Richard had invited his bank partners, some local politicians from Greenwich, and his family. I noticed none of my friends were on the list. When I asked, he said there wasn't room. The mansion has 12 bedrooms and a ballroom that fits 200 people. I didn't argue. I learned many years ago that arguing with Richard Morgan is like shouting at a marble wall. You lose your voice, and the wall stays exactly where it was. On the night of the dinner, I wore the navy blue dress he had chosen. Richard always chose my clothes for events. He said I had no sense of elegance, that I grew up in a family too simple to understand what was appropriate. My father was a mechanic in Hartford. My mother sewed wedding dresses. According to Richard, this made me genetically incapable of dressing for Connecticut high society. I put on the pearl necklace he gave me at our wedding, 3 strands of Japanese pearls with a white gold clasp. For 30 years, I wore that necklace to every important event. It was the only jewelry Richard allowed me to wear. He said it matched my simplicity. I thought it was a compliment. It took me decades to understand it was an insult. I came downstairs at 7. The ballroom was perfect. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with white cloths, arrangements of fresh lilies, the same lilies the florist has delivered every Monday since 1998. The sweet smell of those flowers makes me nauseous to this day. The guests had already arrived. I was the last to enter my own anniversary. Richard was in the center of the room, impeccable in his charcoal grey Brioni suit. At 58, my husband was still a handsome man. Brown hair with grey at the temples, square jaw, blue eyes that business magazines described as piercing. What the magazines didn't say was that those eyes never really looked at me. They passed over me as if I were furniture. He saw me on the stairs and smiled. That smile I knew well, the public smile, rehearsed, that he used for photographs and speeches. He came to me and offered his arm. The guests applauded. Margaret, my mother-in-law, was at the first table. 78 years old, cream-colored Chanel dress, impeccable silver hair. She looked me up and down and said nothing. In 30 years of marriage, Margaret Morgan never gave me a compliment. The most I got from her was a silence that didn't contain active contempt. Caroline, my eldest daughter, was beside her grandmother. 28 years old, blonde, beautiful, Yale law graduate. She worked as senior counsel in the legal department of Morgan Family Bank, Richard's bank. She waved at me with a quick smile and went back to talking with one of her father's partners. My daughter was always more Morgan than mine. Sophie, the middle one, hadn't come. She texted me 2 hours earlier saying she had a migraine. I knew it was a lie. Sophie had avoided family events since she graduated in fine arts, and Richard cut off her tuition payments. He said he wouldn't fund hobbies. Sophie finished her degree on scholarships and working as a waitress. She forgave me for not defending her. I never forgave myself. And Ethan, my youngest, was somewhere in the house with the nanny. 7 years old, wavy brown hair, chocolate-colored eyes. Ethan was born when I was 45, a high-risk pregnancy that almost killed me. Richard didn't want more children. He said I was too old, that it would be embarrassing. When I found out I was pregnant, he suggested I take care of the problem. I refused. It was the only time in 30 years I said no to Richard Morgan. He never forgave me for it. The dinner proceeded like all of Richard's dinners. He talked with the men about business and politics. The wives talked among themselves about decorating and travel. I circulated among the tables, smiling, asking if everyone was well served, if the wine was good, if they needed anything. Nobody asked me anything about myself. At 9 o'clock, Richard tapped a spoon against his champagne glass. The room fell silent. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he began, with that deep, measured voice he used for speeches. 30 years of marriage is an important milestone, a moment of reflection. The guests murmured approval. Richard looked at me. For the first time that evening, he looked directly into my eyes, and I saw something I didn't recognize. It wasn't indifference. It was something else, something cold, calculated. "Olivia," he said, "come here." I rose from my chair and went to him. The guests were smiling, expecting some romantic declaration, perhaps a toast, perhaps a gift. Richard took my hand. His fingers were ice cold. 30 years, he repeated, looking at the guests. 30 years in which I built an empire. Morgan Family Bank now has $8 billion in assets. We employ 1,200 people. We finance hospitals, schools, social programs. He paused. I smiled, not understanding where he was going. And during all these years, Richard continued. I carried a weight I can no longer carry. The smile vanished from my face. Olivia was never my partner, he said. She was my dependent, a woman who abandoned any ambition of her own to live at my expense, who never worked a single day, who contributed nothing except spending the money I made. The room fell into absolute silence. I could hear the grandfather clock in the study on the other side of the house, striking 9:15. Therefore, Richard said, I'm announcing that I will be filing for divorce. I don't remember feeling anything in the first second. I think my body refused to process the word. Then came the heat, horrible heat, rising up my neck, my face. 50 people watching me. 50 people hearing my husband humiliate me. I opened my mouth to say something. No sound came out. Richard wasn't finished. And as for this, he said, pointing at my neck, this was never yours. He reached out and grabbed the pearl necklace. He pulled hard. The clasp broke, and the pearls scattered across the marble floor, making a sound that seemed much louder than it should have been. I raised my hand to my neck, to the place where the necklace had been for 30 years. The skin burned. The necklace belongs to the Morgan family, Richard said, already walking away from me. Just like this house, just like everything you thought was yours. I looked at the guests. Some looked away. Others, and this was the worst part, seemed satisfied, as if they were watching a show they had been waiting years for. I looked at Caroline. My daughter didn't move. She didn't come to defend me. She showed no surprise. She knew. She already knew. I looked at Margaret. My mother-in-law took a sip of champagne and smiled. A small smile, almost imperceptible, a smile of victory. My legs began to tremble. I needed to get out of there. I needed to find air, silence, anything that wasn't that room full of people who hated me. I crossed the ballroom. No one stopped me. No one said a word. I ran up the stairs. I entered my bedroom. The bedroom I had shared with Richard for 30 years, and locked the door. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. I cried for the humiliation, the betrayal, for all the years I had wasted. I cried for the sacrifices I made that no one remembered. I was 22 when I met Richard Morgan. I was a piano student at the Hartford Conservatory with a full scholarship and a dream of playing for the New York Philharmonic. I met Richard at a charity recital where I was one of the pianists. He was 30, handsome, rich, charming. He said my Chopin was the most beautiful he had ever heard. 3 months later, he proposed. My mother begged me to finish college first. I didn't listen. I was in love, blind, stupid. I got married in 1995. Caroline was born in 1996. Richard said it would be better if I left the conservatory to take care of the baby. I would go back later, he promised. Just a year or two. Sophie was born in 1999. I still hadn't gone back. In 2002, Richard bought a Steinway grand piano and put it in the living room. For you to practice, he said. But there was always a dinner, a trip, an obligation that kept me from playing. And when I sat at the piano bench, Richard complained about the noise, said it interfered with his business calls. Gradually, I stopped playing. The piano is still there, in the living room, covered with a lace cloth that Margaret chose. I passed by it every day. I never played another note. At 1 a.m, someone knocked on the door. Mommy, it was Ethan. I opened the door. My son was in his pajamas, holding his pillow. Grandma Margaret said you were sick, he said. Are you sick, Mommy? I picked up my son. He was too big for that, but I needed to hold him. No, sweetie. Mommy is just tired. Daddy said you're going away, Ethan whispered. Is it true? I didn't know what to answer. I didn't know anything. I didn't know if I would have a house, money, if I would see my children. I knew nothing. Come sleep with me, I said. We'll talk tomorrow. Ethan slept in my bed that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to my son breathe. At 4 a.m, my phone beeped. A message from a number I didn't recognize. Olivia, don't trust anyone. What's happening is bigger than you think. Be careful about the medical appointments. They will use it against you. I tried to call back. The number didn't exist. I got out of bed slowly so as not to wake Ethan. I went to the window and looked out at the dark garden. Who had sent that message? What did the medical appointments mean? I had appointments with my gynecologist because of menopause, hot flashes, insomnia, mood swings, normal things for a woman my age. Why would anyone use that against me? The next morning, I went down for coffee. Richard had already left. The table was empty, except for Margaret, who was drinking tea and reading the newspaper. She looked at me when I entered the kitchen. You should have kept quiet about the appointments, Margaret said, without taking her eyes off the paper. I felt a chill in my stomach. What appointments, Margaret? My mother-in-law folded the newspaper carefully. She stood up, smoothed her dress. The appointments with your gynecologist here about the menopause. She pronounced the word as if it was something disgusting. Richard knows everything, and he knows people who can interpret those symptoms in very interesting ways. She walked closer to me. I could smell her perfume, something floral, expensive, suffocating. My son deserves a wife who is worthy of him, Margaret whispered. You never were, and now, finally, we're going to correct that mistake. She left the kitchen. I stood there alone, with the coffee cup trembling in my hand. What were they planning? 3 days passed after the dinner. 3 days in which Richard didn't speak a single word to me. He left early, came home late, and slept in the guest room. The house, which had always been cold, became a mausoleum. I spent those days trying to understand what was happening. I called my gynecologist, Dr. Patterson, and asked if anyone had requested my medical records. She said no, that everything was confidential. I wanted to believe her. I couldn't. The anonymous message kept echoing in my head. Be careful about the medical appointments. They will use it against you. Who knew about my appointments? Who would want to warn me? On the fourth day, Caroline came to visit. I was in the living room when I heard her car pull into the driveway. A black BMW, a gift from Richard on her 25th birthday. I remember that day. I had bought her a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, her favorite book when she was a teenager. She thanked me politely and spent the rest of the day showing the car to her friends. The book is still on her shelf, unopened. Caroline entered without knocking. She was wearing a grey suit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like Richard. The same cold expression, the same calculated posture. "Mother," she said. "Not Mom. Not Mommy, Mother. Caroline, I didn't know you were coming. This isn't a social visit." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a manila envelope. She placed it on the coffee table between us. "What is this? Legal documents? You're being served?" I stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. My own daughter, standing in the living room where I had nursed her as a baby, was serving me legal papers. "Caroline, I don't understand. You're my daughter. I'm also an attorney for Morgan Family Bank, and Dad has retained me to represent him in the divorce proceedings." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had to sit down. My legs wouldn't hold me. "You're going to be your father's lawyer? Against me? It's not personal, Mother. It's business." "Business? I'm your mother. I changed your diapers. I sat with you every night when you had nightmares. I sewed your ballet costume by hand because the store-bought ones weren't good enough for you." Something flickered in Caroline's eyes, just for a second, then it was gone. That was a long time ago. Does time erase everything I did for you? Caroline picked up the envelope and held it out to me. "You have 30 days to respond. I suggest you find a lawyer." I didn't take the envelope. I couldn't move. Caroline placed it on the table again and turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. "Mother, a piece of advice. Don't fight this. Dad has resources you can't imagine. The best thing you can do is accept whatever settlement he offers and move on with your life. And if I don't?" Caroline looked at me over her shoulder. Her eyes were cold, but I saw something else there. Fear? Guilt? I couldn't tell. "Then things will get much worse for you." She left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. I sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope. Finally, I opened it. The documents were dense, full of legal language I barely understood. But some things were clear. Richard was seeking full ownership of all marital assets, including the house. He was offering me a settlement of $12,500 per month, a pittance compared to his billions. And he was seeking full custody of Ethan. Full custody. He wanted to take my son. I kept reading. There was a section about my mental fitness. It referenced concerning behaviors and emotional instability. It mentioned my medical appointments and suggested that my hormonal condition made me unfit to care for a child. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the papers. They were going to use my menopause against me. They were going to say I was crazy because I was going through something that every woman goes through, and my own daughter was helping them do it. I needed help. I needed someone on my side. I called Sophie. She answered on the third ring. "Mom, what's wrong? Can you come over? Please, I need to talk to you." "I'll be there in an hour." Sophie arrived in 45 minutes. She must have broken every speed limit in Connecticut. When she walked in and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. For the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't completely alone. We sat in the kitchen, the only room in the house that had ever felt like mine. I made tea, more for something to do with my hands than because I wanted it. Then I told her everything, the dinner, the anonymous message, Caroline's visit. Sophie listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I knew Dad was capable of cruelty," she finally said. "But this is something else. Did you know about the divorce?" "No, I swear, Mom, I had no idea." I believed her. Sophie had always been different from Caroline. She had my temperament, my sensitivity. Richard called it weakness. I called it humanity. "What am I going to do, Sophie? They're saying I'm mentally unfit. They want to take Ethan." Sophie's jaw tightened. "They can't do that. Menopause isn't a mental illness. But they have money. They have lawyers. They have connections. And you have the truth. The truth doesn't matter when you're fighting against $2 billion. Sophie was quiet again. I could see her thinking, processing. "Mom, who sent you that anonymous message?" "I don't know. The number didn't exist when I tried to call back." "Someone is trying to help you. Someone who knows what Dad is planning." "But who? Everyone in his circle is loyal to him." Sophie shook her head. "No one is loyal to a monster. They're just afraid of him. There's a difference." She was right. Fear and loyalty aren't the same thing. And where there's fear, there's always someone waiting for a chance to escape. "We need to find out who sent that message," Sophie said. "And we need to find out what Dad is really planning." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." She took my hand. "Mom, I know things haven't been easy between us. I know you couldn't always protect me from Dad. But I'm here now, and I'm not going to let them destroy you." I squeezed her hand. My middle child, the one Richard had dismissed as worthless, was the only one standing by me. "There's something else," I said. I need to tell you something about your father, something I've suspected for a long time. Sophie leaned forward. What? The bank. Morgan Family Bank. I don't think everything there is legitimate. What do you mean? I hesitated. This was dangerous territory. If I was wrong, I would sound paranoid, exactly what Richard wanted people to think I was. But if I was right, over the years, I've overheard things. Phone calls late at night, conversations with people I didn't recognize. Your father always said it was just business, but the way he talked, the secrecy, something never felt right. Do you have any proof? No, nothing concrete, just a feeling. Sophie nodded slowly. Then we need to find proof. Dad is doing something illegal. That changes everything. But how? I don't have access to his office, his computer, anything. I'll think of something, Sophie said. For now, you need to focus on finding a lawyer. A good one. Someone who isn't afraid of the Morgan name. After Sophie left, I went upstairs to check on Ethan. He was in his room, playing with his dinosaur toys, the same dinosaurs he'd been obsessed with since he was 4. Hey, buddy, I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. What are you building? A fortress, he said without looking up, to protect the baby dinosaurs from the T-Rex. That's very thoughtful of you. He finally looked at me, those big brown eyes, so full of innocence. Mommy, why does Daddy sleep in the other room now? Daddy is. He has a lot of work. He doesn't want to wake me up when he comes home late. Ethan considered this. Grandma Margaret says you're going away. She says I'm going to live with Daddy and I won't see you anymore. My heart stopped. When did Grandma say that? Yesterday, when Daddy took me to her house. Margaret was already poisoning my son against me, already preparing him for a future where I didn't exist. I pulled Ethan into my arms, holding him tight. Listen to me, Ethan. No matter what anyone says, I'm your mother, and I will always, always be here for you. Do you understand? He nodded against my chest. I don't want you to go away, Mommy. I'm not going anywhere, baby. I promise. It was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep, but I would die trying. That night, after Ethan was asleep, I went to Richard's study. The door was locked, as always, but I knew where he kept the spare key, in a hollowed-out book on the library shelf. He'd hidden it there for years, thinking I didn't know. I found the key and opened the door. The study was dark, lit only by the moonlight coming through the window. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want anyone to know I was there. Richard's desk was massive, made of dark mahogany. I'd never been allowed in here when he was home. This was his domain, his sanctuary, the place where he made his deals and kept his secrets. I started opening drawers. Most were locked, but one wasn't. Inside, I found bank statements, contracts, documents I didn't understand. I took photos of everything with my phone, not knowing what might be important. In the bottom drawer, I found something that made my blood run cold. A folder labeled Dr. Helena Vance, Psychiatric Evaluation. Inside were drafts of a psychiatric report. My name was on every page. The diagnosis: delusional disorder with paranoid features, exacerbated by hormonal imbalance. The report was dated 2 weeks before the anniversary dinner. They had been planning this for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. And then I saw the handwritten note clipped to the front of the folder. Richard's handwriting, which I'd recognize anywhere. Helena, make sure the language is strong enough to justify involuntary commitment if necessary. I want options. R, involuntary commitment. They weren't just trying to take my house and my money. They weren't just trying to take my son. They were trying to lock me away. I took a photo of the note, my hand shaking so badly that I had to try 3 times to get it in focus. As I was putting the folder back, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was coming. I froze in the darkness of Richard's study, the folder still in my hands. The footsteps grew closer, heavy, deliberate, a man's footsteps. I had seconds to decide. Hide or run. I chose to hide. There was a closet in the corner of the study, behind a leather armchair. I had seen Richard open it once, years ago, to retrieve a bottle of scotch. I moved as quietly as I could, opened the closet door, and slipped inside, pulling it closed just as the study door opened. Through the slats of the closet door, I could see a sliver of the room. The lights came on. Richard walked in. He wasn't alone. A woman followed him, tall, blonde, elegant. She wore a white blouse and black pants and moved with the confidence of someone who owned every room she entered. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could smell her perfume. Shalimar, the same perfume I had smelled on Richard's shirts for years. The perfume I had convinced myself was from a colleague, a client, anyone but what it actually was. Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything? The woman asked. Her voice was cool, professional. Olivia? She's too stupid to suspect anything, Richard said. He sat at his desk and opened the drawer where I'd found the folder. She's been living in a fantasy world for 30 years. She actually believes I loved her. He laughed. The woman laughed with him. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound. The evaluation is scheduled for next week, the woman said. I've prepared the diagnostic criteria. With her medical history and the testimony from your mother and daughter, we'll have more than enough to establish a pattern of instability. And if the judge doesn't buy it, he will. I've worked with Judge Harrison before. He trusts my professional opinion. And if Olivia tries to fight back, her resistance will only confirm the diagnosis. Paranoid delusions, persecution complex. It writes itself. Richard nodded. What about the commitment option? Ready when you need it. 1 signature from me, 1 from a second physician I trust, and she can be held for 72 hours. After that, we can extend it indefinitely if she doesn't cooperate. Good. I want this finished before the quarterly board meeting. The last thing I need is a messy divorce distracting from business. The woman walked around the desk and stood behind Richard. She put her hands on his shoulders. "Don't worry, darling. By the time I'm done with her, Olivia won't be able to fight for anything. She'll be lucky if she remembers her own name." Richard reached up and covered her hand with his. "This is why I love you, Helena. Dr. Helena Vance, the psychiatrist who was going to declare me insane. She was his mistress." They talked for a few more minutes about details I couldn't fully process. My mind was spinning, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. Finally, they left together, turning off the lights and locking the door behind them. I stayed in that closet for an hour, maybe more. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared, was worse than I had imagined. My husband was having an affair with a psychiatrist he had hired to destroy me. They were planning to have me committed to a mental institution, and my own daughter was helping them. When I finally emerged from the closet, my legs were numb. I stumbled to the window and looked out at the dark garden. The moon was hidden behind clouds. The world felt like it was ending, but something inside me had shifted. For 30 years I had been afraid of Richard. Afraid of his anger, his disapproval, his silence. I had made myself small to avoid his contempt. I'd given up everything, my career, my identity, my family, to keep the peace. And none of it had mattered. He had never loved me. He had never respected me. I was nothing to him but an inconvenience to be disposed of. The fear was still there, but now there was something else alongside it. Rage. The evaluation was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I received a notice through Caroline, of course. A formal letter informing me that, as part of the divorce proceedings, I was required to undergo a psychiatric evaluation by Dr. Helena Vance at the Vance Psychiatric Associates Clinic in Stamford. I knew I couldn't refuse. Refusing would only confirm their narrative that I was unstable, paranoid, uncooperative. I had to go. I had to play their game. But I wasn't going to play it blind. The night before the evaluation, Sophie came to see me. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Her usual artistic bohemian style replaced by simple jeans and a wrinkled sweater. "I found something," she said, sitting at my kitchen table, "about the bank." "What?" "I have a friend who works in financial journalism. I asked her to look into Morgan Family Bank off the record. She said there have been rumors for years, complaints from elderly clients whose accounts were mysteriously drained, families who couldn't get answers about what happened to their parents' savings. Rumors aren't proof." "No, but she gave me a name, Linda Marsh. She's a former employee of the bank." "Ah, she was fired 2 years ago, and she's been trying to get someone to listen to her story ever since." "What story?" Sophie leaned forward. "She says the bank has been running a scheme targeting elderly clients. They identify seniors with significant savings and no close family oversight. Then they slowly transfer funds out of their accounts, covering it up with fake statements and forged signatures. By the time anyone notices, the money is gone and there's no paper trail." My stomach turned. That's fraud. That's theft. "It's worse than theft, Mom. These are people's life savings, their retirement funds. Some of them lost everything." I thought about Richard's late-night phone calls, his secretive meetings, the way he would sometimes come home with a strange energy, almost manic, that he would never explain. "How much?" I asked. "How much has he stolen?" "Linda estimates at least $40 million over the past 3 years, maybe more. $40 million. Stolen from elderly people who trusted him, people who thought the famous philanthropist Richard Morgan was helping them protect their futures." "We need to talk to Linda," I said. "We need to get her story on record. I'm working on it. She's scared, Mom. Richard destroyed her professionally after she was fired, spread rumors that she was incompetent, mentally unstable." Sophie paused. "Sound familiar?" It did. It was the same playbook he was using on me. "There's something else," Sophie said. Her voice changed, became hesitant. "I need to tell you something." "What?" She took a deep breath. "Dad's lawyers contacted me. They want me to testify. Against you." The words hit me like a slap. "They said if I cooperate, they'll release my trust fund. All $500,000. I could pay off my debts, fund my gallery, finally have financial independence. And if you don't cooperate, they'll freeze the fund permanently, and they'll make sure I never work in the art world again." She looked at me, her eyes filled with anguish. "Mom, I don't know what to do. I want to help you. I want to stand by you. But if I do, I lose everything I've worked for." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Sophie, I would never ask you to sacrifice your future for me, but I can't just abandon you. You're my mother, and you're my daughter, the only one who has shown me any loyalty in this nightmare." I squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, I will understand. I will not hold it against you." Sophie was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "How can you say that? How can you be so calm?" "Because I love you, and love doesn't come with conditions." She stayed for another hour. We didn't talk about the case, or the bank, or the evaluation. We just sat together, drinking tea, looking at old photo albums. Photos of Sophie as a baby, as a toddler, as a teenager with paint-stained fingers and a defiant smile. After she left, I went to bed knowing that tomorrow I would walk into the lion's den. Helena Vance was waiting for me. She had the power to destroy my life with a single diagnosis, but she didn't know that I knew. She didn't know what I had seen and heard in Richard's study. And that was the only advantage I had. The Vance Psychiatric Associates Clinic was exactly what I expected. A tasteful building in downtown Stamford, all beige carpets and soothing watercolors and magazines from 2019. The reception area smelled like lavender and disinfectant, a combination that made my skin crawl. I signed in at the front desk and sat down to wait. The receptionist, a young woman with a practiced smile, offered me water. I declined. 10 minutes later, a door opened. "Mrs. Morgan, Dr. Vance will see you now." I followed her down a hallway lined with framed diplomas and certificates, Harvard Medical School, Yale psychiatric residency, board certifications, awards from medical associations I had never heard of. The office itself was large and immaculate. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, a massive desk that reminded me of Richard's. Behind the desk sat Helena Vance. She was even more beautiful up close. High cheekbones, sharp jaw, blonde hair swept back in an elegant twist. She wore a white medical coat over a silk blouse, and her eyes were the palest blue I had ever seen. She smiled at me, a professional smile, warm and reassuring. "Mrs. Morgan, please, have a seat." I sat in the leather chair across from her desk. The chair was lower than hers, a deliberate choice, I was sure, a way to make the patient feel small. "Thank you for coming in today," Helena said. "I know this must be a difficult time for you." "It is. I want you to know that this evaluation is completely confidential. Nothing you say here will be shared without your consent." I almost laughed. Nothing would be shared without my consent, except for the predetermined diagnosis she had already written, except for the report that would be used to take my son and lock me away. "I appreciate that," I said. Helena opened a folder on her desk. My name was on the tab. "I've reviewed your medical records from Dr. Patterson. I see you've been experiencing some symptoms related to menopause. Hot flashes, insomnia, mood fluctuations. Yes, normal symptoms for a woman my age." "Of course, completely normal." She made a note. "Have you experienced any other symptoms? Confusion, memory problems, feelings of paranoia?" "No." "Are you sure? Your husband mentioned that you've been increasingly suspicious lately, accusing him of things without evidence. My husband announced he was divorcing me in front of 50 people and ripped a necklace off my neck. I think a little suspicion is warranted." Helena's smile didn't waver. "I understand. That must have been very traumatic." Another note. "Tell me about your relationship with your children." "I love my children." "Of course, but I've heard that your relationship with your eldest, Caroline, has been strained. The Caroline is representing her father in the divorce. That tends to strain relationships. And your son, Ethan, how would you describe your bond with him?" "Ethan is 7 years old. He's my baby. I would do anything for him." "Anything?" Helena leaned forward slightly. "That's a strong word, Mrs. Morgan. Some might say obsessive." I felt my jaw tighten. She was trying to provoke me, trying to get me to say something she could use. "I'm his mother. Loving your child isn't obsessive. It's natural." "Of course." She wrote something else. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. Please answer honestly. Have you ever had thoughts of harming yourself or others?" "No." "Have you ever experienced hallucinations or heard voices that others couldn't hear?" "No." "Have you ever felt that people were conspiring against you? That there were plots or schemes designed to hurt you?" I looked at her pale blue eyes, her perfect smile, her white coat. I thought about what I had heard in Richard's study, about the folder with my name on it, about the plan to have me committed. "No," I said. "I've never felt that way." Because it wasn't a feeling. It was a fact. Helena asked more questions about my childhood, my marriage, my career, my mental health, history. I answered everything calmly, carefully. I gave her nothing she could use. When the evaluation was over, she stood and extended her hand. "Thank you for your time, Mrs. Morgan. I'll have my report ready within the week." I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin cool, and then I smelled it again. Shalimar, the same perfume that had haunted me for years. "That's a lovely fragrance," I said. "Shalimar, isn't it?" For just a moment, something flickered in Helena's eyes. Surprise? Uncertainty. "Yes," she said. "It's my favorite." "I thought so. I've smelled it before." I held her gaze. On my husband's clothes. The silence stretched between us. Helena's smile had frozen on her face. "I'm sure you're mistaken, Mrs. Morgan." "I'm sure I'm not." I turned and walked out of the office, out of the clinic, into the grey Connecticut afternoon. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. I felt power. That night, I received 2 phone calls. The first was from Sophie. "Mom, I made my decision. I'm not going to testify against you. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the gallery. You're my mother, and I'm going to stand by you." I cried. I couldn't help it. After everything, after all the betrayal and loneliness, my daughter had chosen me. "Sophie, are you sure? This will cost you everything." "No, Mom. Losing you would cost me everything. The rest is just money." The second call came at midnight. A block number. "Mrs. Morgan?" A woman's voice, nervous, whispering. "My name is Linda Marsh. I used to work at Morgan Family Bank. Your daughter's friend gave me your number." "Linda?" "Yes. Sophie told me about you. I need to meet with you. I have documents. Proof of what Richard has been doing. But I'm scared, Mrs. Morgan. He has people everywhere. If he finds out I'm talking to you..." "Where can we meet?" "There's a diner in Bridgeport. Rosie's, on Main Street. Tomorrow, noon, come alone. I'll be there." The line went dead. I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, listening to Ethan's breathing through the baby monitor I still kept on my nightstand. My 7-year-old son, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the war being waged around him. Tomorrow I would meet Linda Marsh. Tomorrow I would get the proof I needed. But tonight I allowed myself one moment of hope. Sophie was on my side. A stranger was willing to risk everything to help me. I wasn't alone anymore. The fight was just beginning. Rosie's Diner was the kind of place Richard would never set foot in. Cracked vinyl booths, fluorescent light that buzzed, coffee that had been sitting on the burner since dawn. It smelled like bacon grease and cheap cleaning products. I loved it immediately. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a booth in the back corner, facing the door. Old habits from 30 years of watching Richard conduct his secret meetings. Always see who's coming. Always have your back to the wall. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes and a kind smile, brought me coffee without asking. I wrapped my hands around the mug, grateful for the warmth. My fingers hadn't stopped trembling since the night before. At exactly noon, a woman walked in. She was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with short brown hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She wore a worn cardigan and carried a tattered canvas bag that bulged with papers. She looked like a librarian. She looked terrified. Her eyes scanned the room until they found me. I raised my hand slightly. She hurried over and slid into the booth across from me. "Mrs. Morgan? Olivia, please. Linda." She glanced over her shoulder at the door. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. You said you have proof of what my husband has been doing. I need to see it." Linda reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. She placed it on the table between us, her hand shaking. "I worked in the accounts department at Morgan Family Bank for 12 years. I started as a clerk and worked my way up to senior account manager. I was good at my job. I caught discrepancies that other people missed." "What kind of discrepancies?" "At first, small things. Transfers that didn't match the authorization forms. Account balances that didn't add up. I reported them to my supervisor, and he told me it was just clerical errors, told me not to worry about it." She opened the folder and spread out several documents. Bank statements, transfer records, authorization forms, but I kept noticing things. Always the same pattern. Elderly clients, usually over 75. Significant savings, anywhere from $200,000 to over $1 million. No close family members monitoring their accounts. I looked at the documents. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. What was the pattern? Small transfers at first. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Always to accounts that looked legitimate. Investment funds, insurance policies, maintenance fees. But when I dug deeper, those accounts didn't exist. They were shells. The money was being funneled somewhere else. "Where?" Linda pulled out another sheet. A spreadsheet with dozens of account numbers. Offshore accounts. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Panama, all controlled by the same holding company. She pointed to a name at the bottom of the page. Meridian Holdings, LLC. I traced the ownership through 3 shell corporations. Guess who's at the top? I didn't need to guess. Richard. Richard Morgan is the sole beneficial owner of Meridian Holdings. Every dollar stolen from those elderly clients ended up in his pocket. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. I had suspected Richard was involved in something illegal, but seeing the proof in black and white was different. This wasn't just fraud. This was systematic theft from the most vulnerable people in society. "How much?" I asked. "In total?" Linda pulled out a final document, a summary sheet with highlighted figures. $47 million over the past 4 years. 89 confirmed victims. The average age of the victims is 78. Several of them have died since their accounts were drained. Their families never knew what happened to the money. I thought of my own mother, who died in 2018. She had been 72, with a small savings account she had built over decades of careful living. If she had banked with Morgan Family Bank, Richard might have stolen from her too. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Linda's face twisted with bitterness. "I tried. I went to my supervisor first. He fired me the next day, said I was incompetent, that I had been making mistakes and falsifying records. He spread rumors that I was mentally unstable, that I had a drinking problem. The same playbook, always the same playbook. Then I went to the police. They said they would investigate, but nothing happened. Months went by. Finally, a detective called me and said they had reviewed the case and found no evidence of wrongdoing." Linda laughed, a hollow sound. "No evidence. I gave them a folder full of evidence, but Richard Morgan donates $500,000 a year to the Police Benevolent Association. He plays golf with the chief of police. He's untouchable. What about the FBI? Financial crimes? I tried. They said they would look into it, but I never heard back. I think someone high up made a call. Richard has friends everywhere, Mrs. Morgan. Politicians, judges, law enforcement. The system protects people like him." I stared at the document spread across the table. $47 million. 89 victims. And my husband had walked free for years, celebrated as a philanthropist, while the people he robbed died in poverty. "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked. "Why now?" Linda looked at me with something like desperation in her eyes. "Because I've been fighting alone for 2 years, and I'm exhausted. I've lost my job, my savings, my reputation. I'm about to lose my apartment, and then your daughter's friend reached out and said, 'You were looking for information about Richard. She said you were in trouble. She said he was trying to destroy you the same way he destroyed me.' He is. Then you understand. You know what he's capable of. And maybe together we can do what neither of us could do alone." I gathered the documents carefully and put them back in the folder. "Can I keep these?" They're copies. I have the originals in a safe deposit box. If anything happens to me, my sister has instructions to send everything to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and every regulatory agency I can think of. Smart woman. She had learned the hard way that you couldn't trust the system. Linda, I need to ask you something. Did you send me an anonymous message a few weeks ago, warning me about my medical appointments? She shook her head. No, I didn't even know you existed until Sophie's friend contacted me. So there was someone else. Someone inside Richard's circle who was trying to help me. Another person waiting for a chance to escape. What are you going to do? Linda asked. I'm going to destroy him. The words came out calm, cold, certain. I barely recognized my own voice. Linda studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. Good, he deserves it. She slid a business card across the table. This is my lawyer. She's not fancy, but she's honest, and she's not afraid of powerful men. If you need legal help, call her. I took the card. Thank you, Linda, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Richard Morgan has crushed everyone who's tried to expose him. We might be next. Maybe. But this time, he doesn't know we're coming. I drove home with Linda's folder on the passenger seat, my mind racing with possibilities. I had proof of Richard's crimes, real, documented proof. But I couldn't just go to the police. Linda had tried that, and Richard's connections had shut her down. I needed a different approach. The answer came to me as I pulled into the driveway of the mansion. Caroline. My daughter was representing Richard in the divorce. She had access to his legal files, his financial records, his strategy. If I could get her to see these documents, to understand what her father had really been doing, maybe, just maybe, she would turn against him. It was a long shot. Caroline had chosen Richard's side, but I had to believe that somewhere inside her, the little girl I had raised still existed. The girl who had cried when she found an injured bird in the garden and insisted we take it to the vet. The girl who had written me a Mother's Day card that said, "You're the best mommy in the whole world." That girl couldn't be completely gone. I parked the car and walked toward the front door. It was locked. I tried my key. It didn't work. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the door. Then I walked around to the side entrance. Locked. The garage door. Locked. Every entrance to the house I had lived in for 28 years was sealed against me. I called Richard's cell phone. It went to voicemail. I called Caroline. She answered on the second ring. Mother, I was wondering when you'd call. The locks have been changed. I can't get into my own house. It's not your house, Mother. It never was. The deed is in Dad's name. You have no legal right to be there. My clothes are in there. My photos, my belongings. Your belongings have been packed. They're in the garage. The code is 1995. She paused. The year you got married. Dad thought that was a nice touch. I felt something crack inside me. Not break. I was past breaking. More like a final wall coming down, revealing what had always been underneath. Caroline, please. I need to talk to you about your father. There are things you don't know. I know everything I need to know. You don't. He's not who you think he is. I have proof. Mother. Caroline's voice was ice. Dad warned me you would do this. He said you would try to turn me against him with lies and conspiracy theories. He said the paranoia was getting worse. It's not paranoia. I have documents. I don't want to hear it. You have 30 days to respond to the divorce filing. After that, we proceed with or without your cooperation. Goodbye, Mother. She hung up. I stood in the driveway of my former home, holding a dead phone, surrounded by 28 years of memories that no longer belonged to me. The garage door opened when I entered the code. Inside, I found my life reduced to cardboard boxes. Clothes, books, photo albums, personal items. Everything I owned fit in the back of a single SUV, except for one thing. I walked through the garage to the door that led into the house. It was unlocked. Apparently, they had only secured the exterior entrance. The house was empty. Richard was at work. The staff had the day off. Ethan was at school. I walked through the rooms I had lived in for nearly 3 decades. The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. The dining room where I had hosted hundreds of dinners. The living room with its cold marble and expensive art and the Steinway piano I had never been allowed to play. I stopped in front of the piano. The lace cover Margaret had chosen was still draped over it, gathering dust. I lifted the cover. The keys were yellowed with age, but the instrument was still beautiful. A 1962 Model D, worth over $100,000. Richard had bought it as a status symbol, not as a gift for me. It had sat untouched for over 20 years. I sat down on the bench. My fingers found the keys automatically, muscle memory surviving decades of neglect. I played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece I had performed the night I met Richard. The notes filled the empty house, echoing off the marble and glass. My technique was rusty, my fingers stumbling over passages that had once been effortless. But the music was still there, still alive inside me, waiting. I played until my fingers ached. Then I closed the lid, replaced the lace cover, and walked out of the house for the last time. I took nothing but Linda's folder and a single photograph from the living room mantel. A picture of Ethan on his first birthday, covered in cake frosting, laughing at the camera. Everything else could burn. I found an apartment in Stamford that afternoon. A studio on the 3rd floor of a building with no elevator, 45 square meters of water-stained ceiling and creaky floors, and a view of a parking lot. The rent was $3,200 a month, which I couldn't afford. I paid the first month with my credit card, knowing it would be declined soon. I didn't care. I had somewhere to sleep. That was enough. That night, sitting on the bare floor of my empty apartment, I spread Linda's documents around me and began to plan. I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't go to the FBI. Richard had bought everyone who mattered. But there was one person who couldn't be bought, one institution that might actually care about the truth. The press. Not local press. Richard owned the local press, but national outlets, investigative journalists, people who made careers out of exposing powerful men. I opened my laptop and began to research. Names of journalists who had broken financial scandals, editors at major newspapers, producers at news networks. One name kept coming up, Maria Santos, an investigative reporter at the Washington Herald who had won a Pulitzer for exposing a corporate fraud scheme in 2019. She had a reputation for being fearless, relentless, and utterly incorruptible. I found her email address and began to write. Miss Santos, my name is Olivia Morgan. My husband is Richard Morgan, CEO of Morgan Family Bank in Connecticut. I have documented evidence that he has been running a systematic fraud scheme targeting elderly clients, stealing over $40 million over the past 4 years. I also have evidence that he is conspiring with a psychiatrist to have me declared mentally incompetent and committed to a mental institution in order to silence me during our divorce proceedings. I'm willing to share all documentation and cooperate fully with any investigation. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I read the email 3 times, then I hit send. There was no going back now. The next morning I received a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Morgan, this is Maria Santos from the Washington Herald. I received your email. I have to say, these are serious allegations. I know. I have the documentation to back them up. I'd like to meet with you in person. Can you come to Washington? When? Tomorrow, if possible. I have a window in the afternoon. I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in weeks. Richard thought he had taken everything from me. My home, my money, my reputation, my children. He thought I was alone, helpless, defeated. He had no idea what was coming. That afternoon, I went to Ethan's school. I waited outside the gates, watching the children pour out at 3 o'clock, searching for my son's face in the crowd. He saw me before I saw him. He broke away from his classmates and ran toward me, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Mommy! I caught him in my arms and held him tight. He smelled like playground dirt and apple juice and childhood. Hey, baby! I missed you. Daddy said you were sick. He said you couldn't come home. I'm not sick, Ethan. I have to live somewhere else for a little while. But I'm going to see you as much as I can, okay? Ethan pulled back and looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Mommy, I found something. What did you find, sweetie? He glanced around, as if checking for spies. Then he unzipped his backpack and pulled out a small object, a pen drive, with a dinosaur sticker on it. I found it in Daddy's office, Ethan whispered. He was really mad about something on his computer. He put this thing in a little box and hid it, but I watched where he put it, and when he was gone, I took it. My heart stopped. Ethan, do you know what's on this? No, but Daddy said it was very important. And Grandma Margaret said bad words when she saw it. She said if anyone found it, Daddy would go to jail. I took the pen drive with trembling hands. Such a small thing. A few inches of plastic and metal with a cartoon dinosaur on the front. Ethan, I need you to do something for me. I need you to pretend you never found this. Can you do that? Like a secret mission? Exactly like a secret mission. You're my secret agent, okay? And secret agents never tell anyone about their missions. Ethan nodded solemnly. I won't tell Mommy. I promise. I hugged him again, so hard that he squirmed. I love you, Ethan, more than anything in the world. I love you too, Mommy. A car pulled up to the curb, a black SUV with tinted windows. The driver's door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped out, one of Richard's security guards. Mrs. Morgan. His voice was flat, professional. I'm here to pick up Ethan. I looked at the pen drive in my hand, at my son's face, at the guard waiting to take him away. Ethan, you go with Mr. Davis. I'll see you soon, okay? Okay, Mommy. He hugged me one more time, then ran to the SUV. The guard opened the back door for him, shot me a warning look, and drove away. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the car disappear around the corner, clutching a pen drive that might contain the key to everything, or nothing. There was only one way to find out. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the pen drive with the dinosaur sticker. At 3 a.m, I finally plugged it into my laptop. The folder contained dozens of files, videos, audio recordings, PDFs. I clicked on the first video. Richard's face filled the screen. He was sitting at his desk, Helena beside him. The old bitch in Westport is starting to ask questions, Richard said. Her daughter called twice this week. Can we accelerate the transfers? Already done. By the time they figure it out, the account will be empty. We'll blame her dementia. I watched video after video. Hours passed. The pen drive contained everything. Recordings of them planning the fraud, audio of phone calls with accomplices, spreadsheets tracking every stolen dollar, and recordings of them discussing me, planning the fake psychiatric evaluation, laughing about how easy it would be to have me committed. She's so trusting, Helena said in one video. She has no idea. That's what 30 years of marriage does, Richard replied. She's been trained to believe whatever I tell her, like a dog. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady. The fear was gone. All that remained was cold, clear certainty. I had him. The preliminary hearing was at 2 o'clock at Stamford Superior Court. Richard's team was already there. 3 lawyers, Caroline among them, and Richard himself, looking confident in his Brioni suit. Margaret sat in the gallery, dressed in cream-coloured Chanel. I had no lawyers. I was representing myself. Judge Eleanor Matthews entered. David Bennett, Richard's lead attorney, presented Helena's psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Vance concludes that Mrs. Morgan suffers from delusional disorder with paranoid features, exacerbated by hormonal imbalance due to menopause, Bennett said. We request that a guardian ad litem be appointed. Mrs. Morgan, the judge said, do you wish to respond? I stood. I would like to cross-examine Dr. Vance. Helena took the stand, wearing a navy dress and pearls. Dr. Vance, I began, how would you describe your relationship with my husband? We are acquaintances. Just acquaintances. Do you wear perfume? She blinked. Yes. Shalimar. Interesting. I've smelled Shalimar on my husband's clothing for 3 years. On his shirts, on his skin when he came home late. I stepped closer. You're having an affair with my husband, and he hired you, his mistress, to declare me mentally incompetent. The courtroom erupted. Bennett shouted objections. Richard's face went pale. Order! Judge Matthews banged her gavel. Mrs. Morgan, do you have evidence? I do, Your Honor. I also have evidence of criminal activity. Fraud, theft, conspiracy. My husband has stolen over $47 million from elderly bank clients. Richard jumped up. She's lying. She's insane. Mr. Morgan, sit down, the judge commanded. The courtroom door burst open. Everyone turned. Behind the confused court officer stood Ethan, breathing hard, holding something in his hand. Mommy! He ran down the aisle. I have to show you something. Ethan, how did you get here? I took a taxi. Used the emergency money. He thrust a crumpled envelope at me. I found more things in Daddy's office. I took pictures with the iPad, like a spy. Inside were photographs of bank statements, transfer records, and Richard kissing Helena in a hotel room. I figured out his secret drawer code, Ethan said. It's my birthday. Daddy uses my birthday for all his secrets. I pulled him into my arms, tears streaming down my face. Your Honor, I said, my 7-year-old son just brought evidence because he wanted to help his mother. Because even a child can see what my husband is doing is wrong. Richard stared at Ethan with pure fear. Mr. Morgan, the judge said, is this photograph you? I refuse to answer on grounds it may incriminate me. Judge Matthews set down the photographs. This hearing is adjourned pending investigation. I'm forwarding these material to the State Attorney General and the FBI. Mr. Morgan, I suggest you retain a criminal defense attorney. The gavel came down. The courtroom emptied. Margaret had slipped out the side door when the FBI was mentioned. Caroline stood apart, staring at the photograph of her father kissing Helena. I picked up Ethan and walked toward the exit. Caroline blocked my path. Mom, please. I didn't know about any of this. Dad told me you were paranoid. I believed him. I was trying to help you. You believed him without asking me, without considering your mother might be telling the truth. I know, and I'm sorry. You were going to help him lock me away, Caroline. You were going to help him take Ethan from me. I didn't know. You should have asked. You should have been my daughter first and his lawyer second. Caroline was crying now. Please give me a chance to make this right. Ethan was heavy in my arms. My heart ached. Not today, Caroline. I walked past her, out of the courtroom, into the harsh fluorescent light of the corridor. Behind me, I heard Caroline sob. I didn't turn around. 3 months later, I sat in Maria Santos's office at the Washington Herald, watching the final piece fall into place. It's done, she said, sliding a printed copy of tomorrow's front page across her desk. The story runs in the morning. Every major network has picked it up. The headline read, Billionaire, Banker's Empire of Fraud, How Richard Morgan Stole $47 million from Elderly Victims. Below it, Richard's face, that charming philanthropic smile, stared back at me. By tomorrow, the whole country would know what that smile really hid. The FBI arrested him this morning, Maria continued. Helena Vance too. Her medical license was revoked last week. And Margaret Morgan is being investigated for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. I touched the newspaper. Such thin paper, such small letters, and yet enough to destroy the man who had tried to destroy me. How does it feel? Maria asked. I thought about it. For 30 years, I had lived in Richard's shadow. I had shrunk myself to fit his expectations. I had given up my music, my identity, my voice. It feels like breathing, I said, for the first time in decades. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after Richard's arrest. With criminal charges pending, his lawyers had no leverage. I got full custody of Ethan, half of the marital assets, frozen pending the fraud investigation, and the house in Greenwich. I didn't want the house. Too many ghosts, too many bad memories. I sold it and used the money to buy a small cottage in Westport, near the beach. 3 bedrooms, a garden, and a music room with enough space for my piano. The Steinway arrived on a Tuesday morning. 4 men carried it through the front door while Ethan watched, fascinated. Are you going to play it now, Mommy? Soon, baby. First I need to tune it. But I didn't wait for the tuner. That afternoon, while Ethan was at school, I sat at the piano and played. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece I had performed the night I met Richard. My fingers were clumsy, my timing off, but the music was there, waiting for me, patient as an old friend. I played until my hands ached, then I played some more. Sophie came to visit that weekend. She brought wine and her sketchbook and a new lightness I hadn't seen in years. The gallery is doing well, she said, curled up on my couch. I sold 3 paintings last month, and I have a commission, a mural for a restaurant in New Haven. That's wonderful, sweetheart. It wouldn't have happened without you, Mom, if you hadn't fought back, if you had just accepted what Dad was doing. She shook her head. You showed me what courage looks like. I squeezed her hand. You showed me first, when you chose me over the money. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Have you heard from Caroline? Sophie asked quietly, the question I had been avoiding. She sends letters every week. I haven't opened them. Maybe you should. Maybe, but not yet. Caroline's letters sat in a drawer in my bedroom. 12 of them now, each one unopened. I knew I should read them. I knew I should give my daughter a chance to explain, to apologize, to rebuild. But every time I reached for them, I remembered her cold face as she handed me the divorce papers, her silence while Helena testified against me, her voice on the phone. Don't fight this, Mother. Forgiveness would come. I believed that. But it would come in its own time, not on anyone else's schedule. 6 months after Richard's arrest, I received a letter from Linda Marsh. She had been offered a settlement by the victims' families. Her information had helped recover almost $30 million from Richard's offshore accounts. She was using the money to start a non-profit helping elderly fraud victims. You saved us, she wrote. Not just me, all of us. The families who thought they would never see justice. The victims who died thinking they had been robbed by a system that didn't care. You gave us hope. I read the letter 3 times, then I framed it and hung it in my music room. Some victories are measured in money, others are measured in something harder to quantify. On the 1-year anniversary of the courthouse hearing, Ethan and I made a trip to Bridgeport. We went to Rosie's Diner. The same cracked vinyl booth, the same buzzing fluorescent lights, the same coffee that had been sitting on the burner since dawn. Why do you like this place, Mommy? Ethan asked, poking at his pancakes. Because this is where I started fighting back. This is where I decided I wasn't going to let anyone erase me anymore. He nodded seriously. Like a superhero origin story, I laughed. Something like that. Mommy? He looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. Is Daddy going to jail forever? Richard's trial was scheduled for next month. The prosecutors were confident. The evidence was overwhelming. He was facing 20 to 30 years. I don't know, baby. Maybe for a long time. Good. Ethan went back to his pancakes. He was mean to you. Mean people should go to jail. The simplicity of childhood justice. If only the adult world was so clear. That night, after Ethan was asleep, I finally opened Caroline's letters. They were what I expected. Apologies, explanations, regret. She had resigned from the bank the day after Richard's arrest. She was working at a legal aid clinic now, helping domestic abuse victims navigate the court system. She was in therapy, trying to understand why she had chosen her father's lies over her mother's truth. The last letter was different, shorter, more raw. Mom, I understand if you never forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I want you to know that I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your daughter again. Not for your forgiveness. For myself. Because you showed me what it means to fight for what's right, even when everyone tells you you're wrong. I'm proud of you, Mom, even if I never get to tell you in person. I read it twice. Then I picked up my phone. Caroline answered on the first ring. Her voice was hesitant, hopeful. Mom, come for dinner on Sunday. Ethan misses you. Sophie will be here. Silence. Then very quietly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is the beginning, not the end. You have a lot of work to do. I know. I'll do it. Whatever it takes. I know you will. I paused. I love you, Caroline. I never stopped. But love and trust are different things. You'll have to earn the trust back. I will, Mom. I promise. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my music room, surrounded by the ghosts of the woman I used to be, and the possibilities of the woman I was becoming. The piano gleamed in the moonlight. I sat down and played, not Chopin this time, something new. Something I was composing myself, note by note, measure by measure. A piece about loss and betrayal and the long road to healing. A piece about a woman who refused to be erased. I didn't know how it would end. I was still writing it, but for the first time in 30 years, the music was mine. If you were in Olivia's shoes, what would you have done? Comment below and tell us your story. And if you have your own tale of betrayal and redemption, send it to our channel. Your voice deserves to be heard.